Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that you feel refreshed and refueled as we move into this last round of parallel sessions. Now, the session that is taking place here in the plenary room is all about the agricultural outlook for sugar and biofuels, and it will be expertly moderated by Florence Ronçon. I think this is a little bit of a marathon effort for my colleague this morning, so thank you, Florence. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you mustn't disappear after the end of this parallel session. We'll have 15 more minutes with the Deputy Director General of DG Agriculture and Rural Development, and I'd love for you to stay and listen to her closing words. So on that note, over to you, Florence.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and indeed it is meat and dairy we're going to be looking at. Our colleagues in the other breakout session are looking at the other specialized crops and sectors. So what do the meat and dairy sector have in store for us? We have another group of very distinguished speakers to help us through this second session, starting here with Andrea Czapkowiczowa. Andrea is also from DG Agri in the European Commission, from the unit Analysis and Outlook. Another distinguished speaker joining us online, we have Robert Earhart. Robert is the president of the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative Platform, the SAI platform. We have Jean-Luc Bordeaux, who is the managing director of Ingredients, a subsidiary at Lactalis. We have Tero Hemmile, who's the CEO of HK Scan Corporation. And we have Jan Heugen, who's a farmer in the Netherlands. Welcome to you all. Andrea, I will turn to you first and invite you to present to us the market developments that we can expect in terms of meat and dairy for the next 10 years. So off you go.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, let me guide you through the outlook for the meat and dairy markets in next 10 years. This is an outcome of a teamwork, so I would like to thank here my colleagues Magdalena Grzegorzewska and Benjamin van Dorselaar, who prepared the meat outlook. I'm not sure if my PowerPoint is on. Okay, thank you. So, moving to the substance of the outlook. In at least last 15 years, we have seen that the meat and dairy markets in the EU face many challenges and opportunities. These came, some of them more naturally, with direct impact on efficiency gains, as for example, restructuration. Some others, they were less expected. They came out of the sudden and made sectors to react quickly and to adapt. We may refer to the animal diseases, most recent outbreak of the African swine fever. We may also refer to Russian ban, which happened and made them to react, as well as very recent one, COVID-19, which is a topic we are discussing already for the second day. At the same time, we can also see that consumers are changing. They are changing their habits, they are changing their preferences, and this, of course, impacts the production in the end. Last but not least, there is certain legislative framework, the framework which also impacts some standards of the production, as for example, environmental legislation. Nevertheless, despite all these challenges and opportunities, EU animal production showed how they can adapt and innovate. Looking 10 years ahead, what is going to be there in the outlook in 10 years' time? What is very clear is that these sectors will continue produce more responsibly and more sustainably, and there will be also certain change, so things will be done also differently. This also, for example, means that in case of the milk production, we have more and more non-conventional systems which are gaining importance. So in parallel to the conventional ones, there are more and more this alternative system. This, for example, is expected to prevent steeper reduction of the dairy cows herd that you can see on the slide. At the same time, with the reduction of the dairy cow herd, this has an impact on the meat production, as the majority of the EU meat comes from the dairy cows. When we look into the graph, besides milk production, is also poultry production, poultry meat production, which is expected to gain. And in fact, poultry is the only livestock category which is expected to also gain in terms of the heads. For the others, as for example pig meat, the production is declining, is continuing to decline. The reason for this is that there are certain environmental concerns which are playing a role, as well as the fact that our imports are expected, our imports, meaning in our import destination, are expected to be reduced as the own production capacities in destinations are growing. Nevertheless, the growth will be also impacted or will be also faced higher efficiency gains, as for example with increasing yields in the milk production or the slaughtered weights in the meat production. Doing things differently, doing things sustainably and responsibly is also the value which will be created at the same time, so which will be coming out of the animal production. When we simplify this, we may look at the value which is expected to be created there for farmer, which comes in the provision for his or her livelihood, which then allows them to also adapt and to innovate, to do things, as I said, responsibly, sustainably. The other part of this value creation is, of course, the value for consumer, which is in meeting his or her expectations to produce food in terms of these specific products, in terms of meat and dairy products, which are nutritious, safety, and healthy. Last but not least, we have also impact on the planet, as animal production is done with the interconnection between animals and also the other land around and the environment around. Here also adaptation and innovation is already ongoing and is expected to go on towards the future as well. We might mention several examples where more efficiency can be achieved and where also animal production can contribute. As for example, more efficient manure management, which comes with providing nutrients back to the cycle and for different uses, as for example for biogas production. It also comes with the increasing biodiversity. And last but not least, of course, among the examples listed, carbon sequestration. This covers the supply side, but in order to find the market equilibrium, we of course need to consider demand. And as I said at the very beginning, there are also consumers who are impacting the way how and what products are consumed. Let me spend a bit of time here. When we look at the left-hand side, we might see the change in per capita meat consumption between 2020 and 2030. And as you can see, the arrow indicates, below the arrow, you might see the number of the expected reduction of meat consumption. This comes with a slight reduction of the beef meat consumption, which is in line with the trends of lower red meat intake and also lower availability. As for the other part of the meat consumer basket, which is a pig meat, in the pig meat we already had in recent years situation when exports were growing, so the domestic availability was reduced and consumers were adapting to this, so they were reacting to switching to different kinds of meat. And in this way, poultry was the one gaining. And this is expected to continue also towards the future, so more poultry to be consumed. Both for the perception of a more healthy food, but also for a better preparation in terms of the convenience. Now when we move to the dairy, in case of dairy, as again the arrow shows that there is a almost stable consumption in terms of the product weight, but translated all these products into milk equivalent, so how much milk in fact will be consumed in these products, is an increase of 11 kilograms of milk equivalent. What is the driver here? There are, of course, plenty drivers, but we might just tick some which are segmentation and innovation. Segmentation is expected to help to slow down the decline in drinking milk consumption, which is already there for several years. On the other hand, innovation is, for example, translated into increasing consumption of other fresh dairy products, other meaning than yogurt, cream, and drinking milk. On the top of which also comes, you see it very small, but these are very important dairy products as well, which are milk powders, as skim milk powder, whole milk powder, whey powder, which are processed to the products demanded by consumers for their nutritional value or health aspects. And in this case, I will just pick whey powder, which is expected to gain more popularity in the food processing, and is also then to bring more value to the cheese and whey stream. So all in all, it will be also a gaining importance on the dairy ingredients used for the processing in the future. It's not only EU market which will be changing towards 2030. It's of course important for us to consider how the world demand will change and what is expected to happen there. You can see for both cases, dairy and meat, the growth rate will be slowing down. What needs to be taken into account is that we are comparing to the rates of a very already high basis. So it's still growing at a lower rate, but already on the higher basis. What could be behind this? It's also an increasing self-sufficiency in the final destinations, so the final markets where these products will end up. It's also linked to the fact that population growth is growing at the same time. So taking this into account, these per capita levels of consumption both for dairy and meat, which we have in these final markets, will still not be able enough to be achieved through an increasing self-sufficiency in the domestic markets, therefore more imports expected. It's also the fact of the rising incomes, which makes people on one side to buy more in terms of volume, but it's also changing in terms of the mix of the products linked to their changing habits or preferences. And what is very instrumental here is the development of the sophisticated distribution channels. What could this mean for the EU? As for the meat, the competition will be strong. That's very clear, and we already observed this also in the last years. For the pig meat, the expected reduction is coming from the fact that, as I said earlier, the competition and the domestic production in these markets, especially in China, is going to be increasing. Nevertheless, EU is expected to remain the largest pig meat exporter. As for the poultry, in the poultry you can see that is the only market which is expected to grow its exports. It's linked to the fact that there will be also higher valorization of cuts which are not usually placed on the EU markets. It's also in the outlook period the expectation of lower live animal exports, around 30% less, which comes from some considerations on the animal welfare and also financial liability of the partners. Now when we move to the dairy part, in the dairy part, just a bit to introduce the graph, the size of the bubble shows in terms of the milk equivalent, the volume of traded milk in the respective products. On the x-axis, you have the annual rate growth towards 2030. On the y-axis, it's the change in terms of the volume. What you can see clearly there is cheese, whey powders, and SMP, which are currently taking the greatest part altogether for the exports, and towards the future, these three together are going to take around 70% of the EU export growth. Also, in these markets, there will be increasing competition, especially on the commodities which are more price-driven, so there is a much easily find the replacement, but of course, EU is also known for its quality products, so it will also still be the room to improve both streams in the exports. When I move to the very end, I would like to just maybe summarize a bit. It's indeed very interesting times that meat and dairy markets in the EU will be facing. There will be a lot about adaptation and innovation towards the future as well, but to remain responsible and sustainable towards the consumer, nature, and towards society. And I'm very pleased that in the upcoming minutes we will have with us some speakers from the industry, from the field, speaking about how they innovate, how they adapt, what is driving their choices. And I will just hand it over now to Florence to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you for setting the scene. And indeed, the time has come to turn to our speakers online, starting with you, Robert. Now, Robert, you're not only the president of the SCI platform, but you're also a specialist in raw agricultural material for Nestlé. And I'd like to invite you to give us your perspective, actually, on how animal production is affected by the current sustainability trends and requirements, and how can we support farmers to help them meet those requirements?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. So as introduced, I head within Nestlé the Task Force 1 on climate and livestock, as well as I'm responsible for global fresh milk sourcing. And the other hat I carry is being the president of the SCI platform. And I'd like to show today how these two things actually fit together. I'm sure you've all heard that Nestlé has committed, here is an example, on the net zero roadmap journey. And we've made our roadmap public just, I think, on the 3rd of December when our CEO, Mark Schneider, came out explaining what that entails. And I would like to link now these two things together and take you through the next 15 minutes through a little journey. We disclosed, yes, please go to the next slide. We disclosed our footprint. And if you look at the footprint here in the case of Nestlé, a big piece, this huge big piece in blue is what comes from ingredients. And you can see that dairy, livestock, but also other agriculture ingredients play a significant role. This is when you take all three scopes into account. Scope 3, which is agriculture, plays a really significant role. This is where we need to tackle, we need to support and work and collaborate together in regards to sustainability. So if you go to the next slide, it is really no surprise that Nestlé then has committed to really help embed regenerative agricultural practices throughout all of its supply chains, thereby actively also reducing the carbon footprint that our supply chains have. Now, our supply chains consist of the supply chains of a lot of the different cooperatives and companies that we work together with who are part of our supply chain. At the same time, we're also looking at reforestation, thereby effectively taking carbon out of the air and tying it back into trees. I would love to add also soil, but you know also the debates that are there and the gaps that are there in science about carbon sequestration and soil. But I'm sure that in not so far future, also that could be resolved so that that can be leveraged more actively going forwards. Next slide, please. Now, here is a key message on our approach of how we do this. We try to do this by creating pilot farms and showing how a tangible future can look like. So example farms where we reach sustainability. And I'm not saying that these are going to be perfect or that there is one solution that fits all. These have to be multiple solutions that are locally adapted to the environment. And as we practically implement it, we'll get feedback from our stakeholders, be it the farmer, probably the most important one, but also NGOs and government and others as well, who then give feedback on, is it possible to adapt such things? Where are there gaps where research is required? What kind of training is required for that? And once we understand what farmers can contribute and can do, what industry can do to support, we'll also identify the gaps where agricultural policies will have to step in to close those gaps because nobody can actually carry everything alone. So this is a key message, and I'm going to end up with the same key message. It's really about the collaboration between policies, between industries and farmers, all working hand in hand with the same goal to do that. And of course, this is going to cost money. It is not going to be free. It's not going to be easy, not going to be cheap. But we are not in a stroll in the park. We are in a race. And in order to achieve that, we have to drive transformation. We have to enable access to capital and this transformation to take place. And hopefully, this transformation can be done in such a way that the youth, the next generation, find agriculture appealing, interesting, and something that they choose. That we're not struggling with finding next generation of farmers, but that we're finding people wanting to go into agriculture, being farmers by choice, because it becomes a great life to be in. Now, we're far away from that, but that is where we need to go, because we do like eating, and that's something we can't live without. And I think COVID has shown that. How does that play in together with SCI Platform? Now, SciPlatform was founded in 2003 by Nestlé, Danone, and Unilever, and then has since grown significantly. If you can go to the next slide as well, thank you. Its purpose is really to connect, to collaborate, and build. And we do this in 3 different ways. By building industry solutions. Why? If you're a farmer and you produce wheat and potatoes, and you have maybe some milk as well, and then if you have milk, obviously you have meat, and you're selling to different off-takers, they will all come with different sustainability requirements. And then you're exporting to many, even different countries, which have different sustainability requirements. It becomes nothing short of a nightmare for a farmer to work with that. You cannot have 10 different requests and, tick the box sheets. You have to align, you have to work together. And this is what we try to do with industry solutions, is to simplify and align on what really matters. The theme leadership also then touches the point of a knowledge hub, training, making learnings available for all, and at the same time to align on the metrics. How do we really measure the SBTIs? How do we track where we are at and how we improve? And then to the point of collaborative action, back to that same farmer who has different agricultural commodities, why can't we simply all work together and helping the farmer to drive it forward rather than everybody trying to put a different emphasis? And here we're looking at changing at scale, at landscape level. So we're now going to have a quick look at how SciPlatform is set up to do so. We have over 125 different food and drinks company with a very strong European background. Yes, please, to the next slide. That is represented here. And we're going to look at 2 examples, one which is on dairy and one which is on beef. Next slide, please. In the dairy working group, the SciPlatform represents a roughly 30% of the globally traded dairy volumes, their processed dairy volumes. And we've created a common approach called the Sustainable Dairy Partnership. Now, what is this Sustainable Dairy Partnership? If you can go to the next slide. The Sustainable Dairy Partnership was built, and here are just a few examples, in alignment with pan-national or national programs, so the IDF, but also Dairy Australia. We have representations also from farmers. We have DMI representation from Europe, obviously, the Global Dairy Platform, the SciPlatform, to mention a few, and also the Dairy Sustainability Framework, which was a separate organization simply created to help develop these 11 KPIs highlighted below, which were then peer-reviewed through national bodies, academia, and NGOs, so that we have a common approach on measuring going forwards. Now, there is no claim that these are perfect, but I think they're a really good starting point to show where we're at, how we're progressing, and as science evolves, to stick with one example, for example, on soil health, this too will evolve and get fine-tuned. It is inclusive, not exclusive. So what it does, it also takes existing programs of companies or countries into account, looking at where they're at, where the gaps are, and thereby showing where they are on the maturity journey. So for a company, it could be, are you already on board on the sustainability journey? Do you have commitments? Have you done a maturity assessment of what really needs to be done? All the way up to continuous reporting with a proper verification system behind it. Because in the end, we need to be accountable towards each other, as we need to be accountable to our consumers in doing what is really required, which is becoming sustainable, and thereby securing the food supply for this planet and for our children's future. Now to the example of beef. The next slide, please. Here too, SciPlatform is hosting the European Roundtable for Beef Sustainability, and here too, a materiality assessment was done across Europe, identifying some of the key elements and indicators to start off with. By no means are these complete, and we want to extend that in due time further. So farm management, animal medicines, animal welfare, and greenhouse gas emissions are the starting point. And this has led to the creation of beef roundtables in different countries across Europe. The aim is really to have measurable positive impacts at scale, at national level, where the beef industry can be held accountable to and also show how it's progressing. Because a lot of farmers do a lot of work, but it's never reaching, the impact of what is really being done is never reaching the consumers in the end. But but it doesn't mean that by far everything is okay. We still, as in dairy, as in livestock generally, have still a long way to go. But what is being done and what change is being done should also be clearly shown. Next slide, please. So the Beef Roundtable, in Europe, you see here where the different beef roundtables are already created within Europe. This does not mean that they necessarily represent the majority of the beef industry in that country. In some cases, this is definitely the case. In the others, they are younger and are in process of being developed. And also, the European Roundtable for Beef Sustainability is not something that is hanging out alone in the air, but it is tied in with the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef and the other regional programs that exist already. This is the collaboration that we seek. This is the collaboration that is required in an interconnected food supply chain globally. Now, finally, I would like to re-emphasize the same message that I showed that we had with the perspective from Nestlé. It is a collaboration that is required between policymakers, industry, and farmers. We cannot push all the responsibility of doing the changes at farm level. The industry alone cannot by itself or by individual companies drive the change. It is a collaboration of all three elements. And if we do this smartly and wisely together, we can move at a fast pace. And we don't have 20 years to discuss. We have to start moving now, acting now, and creating tangible impacts in a factful manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Robert, for highlighting this sense of urgency. And indeed, I think this is something that we will hear about even more from our next speakers. Turning to our first speaker from the actual panel, Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc, it seems that the market for dairy ingredients is actually growing, or is it really? And if it is, what are the drivers behind this growth?
Bonjour mesdames et messieurs. D'abord, merci aux organisateurs de cette conférence de nous avoir invités et proposé de présenter notre vision sur les perspectives des ingrédients laitiers au regard des évolutions des demandes des consommateurs. Next slide. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi en une slide de vous présenter la division Lactalis Ingrédients. Au sein du groupe, notre mission est de traiter d'une part les volumes de lait excédentaires au-delà de la division des activités de produits grande consommation et d'autre part de traiter les coproduits issus de ces activités produits grande consommation. Et je veux parler par là des perméas, des sérums, des babeurs, pour parler des plus importants. Nos sites industriels présents en Europe, en Amérique, produisent plus de 640 000 tonnes d'ingrédients par an. Notre catalogue d'ingrédients est très large puisqu'il compte quasiment tous les types d'ingrédients laitiers existants, qu'il s'agisse de poudre de lait réengraissé en matière grasse végétale, de caséine, de poudre de sérum, de poudre de perméa, de sérum déminéralisé, de protéines de sérum, de lactose, de différents types de beurre concentré, voire de fromage ingrédients. Vous voyez donc que la liste est relativement longue. Next slide. Notre métier de producteur d'ingrédients consiste donc à cibler certains constituants du lait, les séparer ou les extraire des autres éléments, les processer et les mettre sous une forme physique permettant de les conserver facilement, mais aussi de les transporter facilement aux quatre coins du monde. Le lait est le liquide maternel originellement adapté à l'alimentation des nouveau-nés. Il est extrêmement riche en de nombreux constituants. Ces constituants vont d'ailleurs se trouver à des concentrations très variables dans le lait, allant de quelques dizaines de grammes par litre à des concentrations de l'ordre du picogramme par litre, voire inférieures. Le liquide que nous allons donc processer contiendra tout ou partie de ces constituants, s'agissant du lait ou de coproduits. Les intérêts d'usage de ces ingrédients que nous allons produire vont se trouver dans une grande variété d'applications. Ce sera par exemple l'alimentation animale, l'alimentation humaine, la nutrition spécialisée, qu'elle soit sportive, qu'elle soit infantile, qu'elle soit clinique, voire même l'industrie pharmaceutique. Next slide. Le métier a fortement progressé ces 30 dernières années, ou même peut-être un peu plus, avec des évolutions très importantes des technologies industrielles, qui a permis d'aller beaucoup plus loin dans le cracking du lait. Voilà bien le maître mot de notre activité, le cracking du lait. Ces technologies vont reposer pour l'essentiel sur des technologies de séparation, que ce soit de la séparation centrifuge, mais de plus en plus des séparations membranaires, telles que la microfiltration, l'ultrafiltration, la nanofiltration, l'osmose inverse, et plus récemment des technologies comme la chromatographie, l'électrophorèse ou le passage sur des résines échangeuses d'ions. Next slide. Alors, lorsque l'on parle de produits issus du lait, ce sont souvent les produits grande consommation qui viennent spontanément à l'esprit, pas les ingrédients laitiers. Et pour autant, à l'échelle mondiale, les volumes sont très conséquents. On peut estimer que 15% de la collecte est directement orientée vers la production d'ingrédients. Et là, je ne parle que du lait, je ne parle pas des coproduits. Toujours au niveau mondial, les volumes de poudre de lait écrémé seraient de l'ordre de 4,8 millions de tonnes, ceux de poudre de sérum de l'ordre de 3,2 millions de tonnes, 1,5 million de tonnes pour le lactose, 430 000 pour les protéines de sérum, autrement appelées WPC. Pour des volumes, certes, beaucoup plus petits, mais avec de grandes importances en termes de valeur, on pourrait aussi parler de la lactoferrine, des alpha-lactalbumines, des phospholipides, des HMO ou de GMP. Au total, le marché des ingrédients laitiers pèserait pour environ 50 milliards d'euros. Next. Les clients producteurs d'ingrédients laitiers que nous sommes sont pour la majorité des industriels. Nous sommes présents sur des marchés en B2B. Ce sont donc nos clients qui sont des industriels qui vont prendre en compte les attentes des consommateurs pour définir leur cahier des charges. Et alors aujourd'hui, quels sont les drivers concernant la demande en ingrédients laitiers? Tout d'abord, le consommateur va rechercher une alimentation saine. Ensuite, il sera pris en compte une consommation responsable, dans laquelle le consommateur va affirmer son attention sur les sujets environnementaux, le bien-être animal. La consommation des produits alimentaires doit aussi être synonyme de plaisir. Aussi, les ingrédients laitiers que l'on va pouvoir proposer vont apporter leur concours aux qualités organoleptiques, sensorielles des produits finis. Par ailleurs, les évolutions des modes de vie et des modes de consommation dans un monde en pleine évolution sont importants dans notre société moderne. Les ingrédients laitiers ont un rôle important à jouer dans l'élaboration de ces nouveaux repas. Enfin, n'oublions pas l'essentiel. Il y a 7 milliards de bouches à nourrir sur notre Terre. Des populations avec, pour la plupart, des pouvoirs d'achat extrêmement limités. Les gammes d'ingrédients laitiers proposées doivent donc aussi permettre aux produits finis qui vont intégrer ces ingrédients d'être économiquement accessibles pour le plus grand nombre de terriens. Next slide. Concrètement, que cela veut-il dire concernant nos ingrédients laitiers attendus? On pourra citer quelques exemples. Ils doivent apporter de nouvelles textures, de nouvelles fonctionnalités. C'est ce que l'on fera, par exemple, avec des caséines ou avec des protéines sériques. Nos ingrédients doivent s'inscrire dans la naturalité. Pour cela, on mettra en œuvre des procédés industriels qui vont respecter au mieux l'intégrité des constituants du lait, ou au pire avec un minimum de dénaturation. Nos ingrédients devront également répondre à des besoins nutritionnels très précis, qu'ils soient adaptés aux nourrissons, qu'ils soient adaptés aux personnes âgées, aux personnes malades, aux sportifs. C'est ce que vont permettre un certain nombre de nos protéines de sérum, autrement appelées WPC. Nos ingrédients vont également permettre de proposer des boissons ou des yaourts à des prix économiquement intéressants pour des populations, pour certaines populations, fabriqués à partir de poudre de lait réengraissée en matière grasse végétale. Vous voyez, la liste est longue et elle s'allonge d'ailleurs année après année avec les nouvelles opportunités qu'offre l'évolution de nos technologies industrielles. L'avenir est donc prometteur et encourageant. Certains pronostiquent d'ailleurs que le business pourrait croître de peut-être 30 à 40% dans les 6 prochaines années. Nous sommes donc encore loin d'avoir fait le tour du sujet. Voilà ce que je voulais vous dire en résumé.
Thank you very much for this presentation and also for pointing out that indeed the trends are quite positive and they're also diversifying, which is definitely something that dairy producers are happy about. We'll now look at the meat angle, and Tero, I will turn to you. We've heard how consumer preferences are shifting. They are shifting, we've heard in the session before, in terms of fruit and veg, wine, and so on. We've just heard that they are shifting as well in terms of dairy products, or at least that there are new opportunities developing. What are consumer preferences, or how are they shifting in your sector, and why? Why do you think they're shifting? We cannot hear you, I'm afraid.
Is it now better?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. So first of all, thanks for inviting me to this session to share my views concerning this important topic, shifting the consumer preferences for different types of meat and the main drivers behind. Let's go to the next page. Very briefly about the company, what I'm presenting, HK Scan Food Company, operating mainly around the Baltic Sea regions, and we are a community of 7,000 employees, mainly producing meat and meat products, also a bit other food as well, having the major consumer brands in our portfolio in those home markets where we are operating, mainly Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and the Baltic markets. So we are also operating, which are a key part of the whole community. We are operating roughly with around 5,000 farmers. Next page, please. Yeah, we are talking, we just heard in the very beginning about the meat consumption trend within the EU, and we can say, like we heard already, that I would say that so far the meat consumption in total has been pretty stable. We see the differences between different types of meat, like beef, like heard a slight decline, rather stable, I would say. However, in pork there is a stronger decline. I would not say that there's any kind of a revolution taking place, but it's more clear, the decline. And then again, the poultry, which is clearly increasing. And of course, the development varies a bit between the different EU member states as well. But maybe these drivers, let's say, like we have been talking about, they are derived from environmental aspects, first of all. The climate impact, the climate discussion is coming more and more strongly to the agenda. I would say water footprint will be discussed even more in the future than today, and also the biodiversity as an example of the key topics behind the environmental aspects. But we also know that the healthiness of the food is very, very key, which is discussed quite a lot when it comes to meat. Then convenience, easy to cook and easy to eat, etc. Those are very important, as well as the origin of raw material. At least now, especially during the COVID-19 time, at least we have experienced that the domestic meat and domestic raw material, they are really preferred strongly during these times. And then the last, but definitely not the least, the animal welfare aspects, they are very, very important, and I think they are becoming even more important now during the next years. Next page, please. So, I mean, the meat itself, I think that there are clear opportunities as well as challenges to really gain the position to license to operate in the future. So obviously the market, consumers, customers, they are asking more for transparency, more data of the production on farm level, etc. So therefore, I do believe strongly, and our company believes strongly as well, that these value chains, we will operate more and more as an integrated ecosystem where we together with the farmers are closely collaborating with each other, but we need partners, as was already mentioned during this session, that we are not there alone. We need to support the farmers. They are elementary part of the value chain, but we need partners also bringing those competencies in, which we can, for example, take forward the carbon capture, animal welfare, and these kind of important topics on farm level. So these are very, very key elements, and the way to operate, I do believe, to create the transparency really is to go into more integrated value chains, work as an ecosystem, having a digital transparency as well, so that we can provide the data of the production and key KPIs, whatever they might be, concerning the climate impact, water footprint, also animal welfare. One important topic is also the food safety, like the antibiotic-free animal production, which is strongly present in Nordic countries, for example, and we are emphasizing that very heavily. Next page, please. Yeah, I said that I do believe strongly that really to be able to gain the license to operate in the future, we have a lot of opportunities. First of all, we see that meat, despite the fact that like pork, beef, they may decline a bit, poultry will grow. However, we should understand that meat is a key part of the balanced diet of every human being. So from meat, we get the very many important nutrients in a natural way. So even though meat and meat products may be less often as a main dish as part of the diet, they are, however, a key part of the balanced diet. On top of that, nutritional point of view, we are really, like I said, developing the farming practices together with the farmers in this kind of ecosystem model, where we have also other partners supporting those activities, what we need on farm level. And then this all is enabled by a digitalized ecosystem way of working, so that we can offer the relevant data to the customers and consumers in a transparent way, so that there is a strong license to operate in place all the time. Next page, please.
I have to ask you to wrap up, please, Tero.
Yeah, okay, but this is actually my last slide, and like I said, that we do believe strongly that meat will have a role in the balanced nutrition, but we need to build this ecosystem type of way of working and be transparent, and digitalization will be a big enabler in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for making the case for the meat sector. We'll now turn back to farming life, and I will reach out to Jan in the Netherlands. Jan, good morning. You're a farmer, and you try to turn your farming business into an active part of the regional food system. How do you do that?
When you show my slides, I can tell the story. You see me?
You can go ahead.
You see, I see no slides. Is that okay? You hear me?
We hear you, we see the slides. We're on the first slide with a yellow frame.
Okay, yes.
You see them? Good.
It's I see them, and you see here besides each other 2 farms. My farm, the Eemlandhoeve farm, a meat farm, and the other side, the milk farm. And he is the biggest, and I am the broadest farmer. And together we have a sort of an ingredients for the regional food system. And my model is not clashing, my model is frictioning, and then something new can come out. So that's very interesting to see. So I would like to invite our EU Commissar to come and to see and to visit that 2 farms, 2 paradigms, living beside each other, and then still looking how we can be the ingredients for the regional food system. Yes, next one. It is in the midst of Utrecht, midst of the Holland, the Utrecht region. And on the other side, you see already the idea of a Mansholt campus. And Mansholt was a famous guy, first in Holland and later on in the European Union. And you see here the biggest farmer, the broadest farmer, and also the citizens' park, and then the local processing and the local logistic coming to each other. And my point of view is, can we give our region, and in my region it is 250,000 people, 20-30% of the people products from their own region. So that's my goal. Okay, the next one. Then you have to take a step back to Mansholt. And when he was after World War II, when there was also a very big crisis, he was modernizing the farm and modernizing the industry. And then you see that there is enough production for enough. But I was very inspired by Skar Akis' 3 studies from the European Union, who says at the moment there is again a sort of a cross point, a crossroad. One is high tech to feed the world. And I think, for instance, also at the powers at the world, Amazon, who buys a complete whole food chain, but which impacted the whole chain. The second is that the regions and farmers and citizens know we would like to have our own impact in our own region, so regional self-organization. And the third is that sense of, okay, what is our resilience? It can be collapsed again. We saw now a COVID virus, but it can also be a digital virus. So be aware what kind of strategies to the future it will be. And sometimes I think we need a third pillar of the CAP for that regional self-organization. Okay, the next slide. My next steps in that regional food strategy approach is very central, a smart Green Deal from farm to fork in our region as an experiment. And central in it is the citizens movement. And I gave them, the citizens, 3 buttons. I visit and come and meet. I buy, and then we have to take account the fair true price for the farmer. And I was inspired also by the French model, qui est le patron, which introduces also the fair true price on the bottle itself. And the third element is the investing part. And then I go to my Germans, the Raiffeisen, he was a mayor who was also taking care of his region, that even the citizens can be invested in their own regional food system. And on the Mansholt campus, we have a sort of a learning experimental and a food hub for development. Yes, the next slide. So in some sense, I feel the urge for redesign agriculture, a nice word, agriculture, the culture of the agri. And there were Mansholt Prize winners, Carlo Petrini from the slow food, he was from the food culture, Franz Fischler, he was for the second pillar of the EU, and also I myself was receiving it for redesigning the agriculture, opening the minds of the farmers to connect again to the citizens. Now, 3 citizens buttons I mentioned already. A smart Green Deal, the price for the farmer goes up, decreasing the outputs, so the revenues don't change for the farmer, and then he can realize green goals, and it can be then embedded in the region. There's even data, finance, food in the regional context. So in some sense, my vision is stopping the rat race to the bottom for the farmers, the citizens, and also the nation, and building a new covenant between the citizens and the farmers about food, health, and nature. And yesterday, when I heard the stories, I was thinking about, do we need a third pillar on the regional food strategies on the EU level? That was my story.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you, and thank you for giving us food for thought with your conclusion. So we'll now turn back to you, our audience, and time has come to give another try to our Slido. So open your slido.com, go to Agri Outlook, and it's day 2, session 8. And here comes our question. What will influence your decision to consume meat and dairy products in the future? Is it going to be, I don't know, it can be quality, it can be price, it can be choice, it can be health, it can be, we've heard quite a few words going around in the presentations that we've just had. So what will influence your decision to consume meat or dairy products? Environmental impact is clearly having a huge impact. Okay, so yeah, bioquality, I suppose, probably means organic. So taste now is above environmental impact. Okay, but yeah, it's the same 4 or 5 words that keep coming round. So it's taste, it's quality, it's environmental impact, and it's price, because it's true that price is always a very important factor in consumers' decisions. Taste, quality, environmental impact, and bioquality or organic quality seem to be the winners. I'll get back to our panel and indeed sustainability, because, you know, environmental impact, sustainability, I suppose they're very closely linked. Sustainability objectives are increasing in terms of animal production. And we know that the sustainability pillars all need to be considered for the changes that are going to happen in the future. So we have the economic aspect, we have the environmental aspect, we have the social aspect. How do you see your business contribute to the sustainability pillars? And I'm going to ask that question to 3 of our speakers, starting with you, Jean-Luc.
Merci. Au travers de notre métier de producteur d'ingrédients laitiers, nos principales contributions sur les aspects de durabilité, on va le retrouver sur 2 secteurs. Tout d'abord, le secteur amont, au niveau de nos producteurs de matières premières, et les plus importants étant évidemment les producteurs laitiers. Et puis ensuite, à notre niveau en tant qu'industriel. Tout d'abord, qu'en est-il sur l'amont de la filière, auprès de nos producteurs? Dans notre groupe, depuis de très nombreuses années, nous avons mis en place une charte de bonnes pratiques avec nos producteurs qui s'appelle Cap sur l'avenir et qui a fixé donc depuis déjà longtemps un certain nombre d'exigences attendues en termes de qualité, d'environnement durable, et ceci sur différents critères. Au-delà de tous ces critères qui existent déjà depuis, encore une fois, un certain nombre d'années, nous poursuivons, nous allons plus loin. Nous travaillons par exemple à mettre en place un diagnostic sur les émissions de carbone au niveau des fermes en utilisant l'outil Cap2ER. Nous constatons une évolution significative dans les pratiques, dans les modes de fonctionnement de nos producteurs, on constate par exemple, et nous sommes là pour les accompagner, que plus d'un tiers de nos producteurs aujourd'hui se sont tous équipés de pré-refroidisseurs sur leurs installations de stockage de lait, permettant ainsi de faire des économies d'énergie. Dans le même esprit, de plus en plus s'équipent de chauffe-eau solaires. Un certain nombre d'entre eux ont déjà investi, poursuivent des investissements sur le photovoltaïque, mais également de plus en plus d'investissements autour de méthaniseurs permettant la production de biogaz. Concernant la conduite des fermes, nous recommandons, nos techniciens laitiers qui accompagnent, qui peuvent conseiller nos producteurs, conseillent à, par exemple, développer, garder des surfaces de pâture. Les surfaces de pâture vont permettre de séquestrer des tonnes de carbone dans le sol. Le groupe continue son engagement à accompagner la transition agricole vers des pratiques plus durables en étant impliqué au niveau de l'interprofession, en participant à l'élaboration de nouvelles chartes sur les bonnes pratiques élevage. Pour parler strictement du bien-être animal, nous travaillons également avec une ONG spécialisée afin d'évaluer des méthodes et des outils de mesure concernant ce bien-être animal, qu'il soit pour les vaches ou pour les veaux. Parce que nous avons besoin de définir des objectifs réalistes et ensuite de définir un timing pour mettre les actions en place. Nous associons bien évidemment les organisations de producteurs à ces réflexions et aux travaux qui vont définir nos relations à long terme. Pour cela, nous réalisons de nombreux audits dans les fermes pour évaluer de façon très pragmatique la situation actuelle et les perspectives futures. Concernant maintenant notre activité en tant qu'industriel, comment au niveau de nos sites industriels, nous pouvons également, ou nous travaillons sur ces enjeux. De par notre métier de sécheur de lait, de sécheur de coproduits, nous sommes de très gros consommateurs d'énergie. Ce point est donc une des priorités. Nous travaillons en permanence à, d'une part, optimiser nos équipements industriels de production et de consommation d'énergie pour au mieux améliorer les rendements, mais pour repenser également, pourquoi pas, les sources d'énergie. Par exemple, sur cette année 2021, en partenariat avec une start-up, nous allons mettre en service, dans le courant de l'année, un des plus grands champs de panneaux solaires thermiques, peut-être le plus grand champ de panneaux solaires thermiques dans le nord-est de la France. Celui-ci va équiper en énergie un de nos gros sites industriels, en l'occurrence celui de Verdun, qui est spécialisé dans le traitement et le séchage de sérum.
Jean-Luc, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up on this particular question.
Okay, just 30 seconds more. Sur nos usines, nous avons également une attention très particulière sur les consommations en eau. En permanence, nous optimisons les consommations, veillons à recycler et à traiter les eaux. Enfin, nous avons un focus très important sur les pertes à chaque étape de nos process pour limiter le gaspillage de la matière. Nous sommes équipés de stations d'épuration et l'indicateur pertinent de mesure d'amélioration est la DCO. Voilà ce que je pouvais dire sur cette question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Tero, the same question goes to you. How do you see your business contributing to the various sustainability pillars? We cannot hear you, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Try again.
Yes,
Yes, very good. Yes.
Very good, very good, very good. Like said that even though meat is nowadays facing challenges, obviously, our strong belief is really that meat belongs strongly to the balanced diet. So you get human beings, they are getting the very important nutrients in a natural way from meat. So therefore, meat is a key part of the healthy diet. But because we are facing these challenges from the environmental perspective, animal welfare perspective, and many others. So we need to create a trust towards the raw material, what we are using. And that means that we are more and more collaborating with our farmers in a more tight way. And let's say, for example, now, like we heard from Nestle as well, that building a sustainable operating models that will be taken to the contract farming, building those with pilot farms in a way that then we can scale those up to the rest of the farms as well. And then we are talking about how can we capture carbon more? How do we develop the animal welfare? What about the manure handling, enhancing the circular economy in plant nutrition as well? But let's say, I think it's also important to understand that the meat itself may not be kind of now the bad boy or bad girl. I think it's more about how can we develop the land usage and to be more resource efficient in that way. It's quite a lot about the feed production on farm level. And that's exactly the way, like I told you already about, that we are building the ecosystem, collaborating more tightly together with the farmers, finding partners who can bring competencies in to be able to go forward with those KPIs, which are key part to create a trust towards the consumers. But we do believe strongly on data-driven digitalization to create the trust and offer the data to the consumers and customers to get the license to operate and to keep the meat as a strong part of the balanced diet also in the future.
Thank you. What about you, Jan? You did talk about your approach. Now, how does your approach contribute to the economic, environmental, and social pillars? I mean, I think the story you told us touches upon all three.
Yes. For me, it is indeed a sort of an integral approach. You saw also the picture of my farm. My wife likes the botany, but now at the moment on the farm are more than 350 species of plants and more than 50 species of birds and all the animals in between. Then you see it is possible when you are creating, but it depends also on that multifunctionality. I have not only the income from the meat, I have also the income from citizens who are visiting him, coming to the shop, having meeting, have their experience, the education element. So that added the value to it. And my next step would be, can we rewarding the price of the farmers? Because you see that the decrease of farmers' price give a lot of trouble. So can we make a new deal and a smart green deal with the citizens around to make that connection? And I even went one step further and says, I would like that the citizens also invest in my farm. So that I'm not only dependent from the bank and the finance. No, it is a sort of a commonality, a sort of a new commons, which you are developing so that the farmer has not only the burden of his finance, share it with also the citizens around, and that we have a co-responsibility for our food system. And I think food is very strong to make that connection between the citizens and the farmers.
Indeed, thank you very much. Now, to continue, let's look at the trends in terms of consumer behavior. I mean, we've heard from previous speakers about how these changes in consumer behaviors actually create change in the way you produce your products. Consumers, or rather the trends, have an impact on what is consumed, when, how, by whom. So there's really a lot of implications expectations. How do you adapt your products and your processes, for those of you who process the products, to consumer concerns and expectations? I mean, Tero, we've heard from you that indeed you are maybe a bit more upstream in the production, but you take a lot of care of what consumers expect.
Yes, I mean, definitely, like you said, that we see, actually, we are very close to the consumers as well, even though selling the products through the food service and retailers. But like we know that the consumer behavior is more fragmented today than before, and it will become more fragmented. And therefore we are also talking a lot about the food moments, and we need to take the products and whatever we produce into those food moments where the food is eaten and how it's eaten and where it's bought and so on. So that is definitely the trend. And however, let's say I do believe as well that the meat consumption will be fragmented as well. So there is a really high end in value type of a meat where transparency and all that kind of thoughts and things, they are very, very important that we need to build in. And in that way, we need to also be able to create a good conscience for the consumers when buying the meat. But they are priced on a high level, I do believe. Then there are, on the other hand, there's a low price segment where price is more important, and that is of course a key as well. But it's more fragmented really to create more value added products, for example, into the form that they are available in those food moments where food in the future will be more eaten and from where it's bought. In this game, digitalization again, also digital solutions between, for example, our company and consumers directly, they are becoming more and more important really to create the transparency and trust and support our consumer brand.
Thank you. Robert, I will come back to you. You certainly explained to us how your company works and also what the thinking behind the SAI platform is, also looking very closely at consumer behaviors and consumer concerns. So how do you adapt your processes and your products to those concerns?
So, I mean, consumers is a very wide definition. So probably in the short answer, I'm not going to do any proper due justice. But I mean, we follow, or better said, serve to consumer behavior and preference. That's what we are aligned out to go and do. And clearly, factful sustainability reporting or radical transparency is going to become critically important. So it's clear that consumer want to know, what is the purpose of a brand? What do they stand for? And that literally means, where does it come from? How was it made? What is in it? And does that represent my value sets that I have as a person? And especially the livestock sector, which has been under scrutiny since probably 2006, even if that report has been refuted. They are going to have to step up the game, and I include us as well. We all in the livestock sector have to step up our game to maintain the license to operate. I'm keeping this on purpose a little bit more high level because I also am aware that I am more of a technical person than a marketing, and probably will not be giving a full satisfactory answer, but these are clear trends that we see. And I do work together with the brands at Nestlé as well, where especially this purpose is key and central.
Thank you. So to continue on those trends and the things that have recently happened, we've seen that during the crisis, both consumers and processors have turned to much shorter food supply chain and to local supplies. They they seem simply to be more adaptable in terms of crisis or in times of crisis. How have your activities, whether it's in the farm or affiliated farms, how have your activities contributed to making the food systems more adaptable to this crisis, but also to potential future crises? And what future developments do you see? And I will turn to Jan maybe for this question.
It has indeed reasons to rethink and redesign our food system. And the main reason is because I see, and I am happy to hear also the stories from the European Union about the contingency, about the role of crisis. Yesterday they said there is a sharp line between success and failure. So it is very important to think ahead. And sometimes you have to reorganize your food system. And for me, it is for that reason to ask almost for the third pillar of the CAP, that regional food strategies will be a very important component in that resilience of the EU. And what I see is there is a momentum at this moment in the finance world, in the policy world, in the consumer behavior world, and also I think in the farmers world, because some steps has to be done also in greening the farms. And when the prices for the farmer is too low, then he has no choice, and he became upset. And you see the farmers in Holland and in Germany. So I think it is very important from the European Union perspective that regional food strategies have to be, as a sort of a new design developed. And it is not easy to do that because it has to be regional embedded. The data, the finance, the food has to be also embedded in that region. And then we can develop new strategies also when something is happening. My son is a security guy, and he is happy that his father is a farmer because what he says, we go a new time for digitalization, but also a time for the cyber risk, which can be very easily come. And then you have a sort of a precautious, be aware, we can have a sort of backup in our regional food systems.
Thank you. So, Robert, that's why I wanted to have Jan's input before I have yours, because Jan's farm could be one of the farms that you work with. So how do you create that link, and how do you make those food systems more adaptable, more flexible, more prepared for future crises?
Thank you. And I very much like the input from Jan as well. It is about production systems being prepared for the future. I like to use the word agripreneurship here as well, because it reflects on developing a farming business model that is up to date with its environment and able to deliver on it. And if COVID has shown something, those who were good have become better during this COVID crisis. Those who were weak have become weaker, and it has simply sped up the process that we are in. COVID has also taught us the importance on the difference between agility and lean food supply systems. But coming back to what it really means on a farm, if we become, Jan used the word greener, I would like to use it more sustainable, more regenerative in our agricultural systems, like with healthier soils, biodiversity, and so on, we have more resilient production systems. And with the climate change and adaptability that we're going to have to face, if we like it or not, with our crops and our supply chains, we really, really need that. And those ones who have been working on it, they have seen the benefit of it and have profited from this during the COVID period. I think food has taken itself a central position during this COVID crisis, as well as food, supply within the region itself, so that you have food assurance given. We've always tried to strike a balance between food that we acquire through global trade and what we do through local supply chains. We very much support local for local food supply chains. And this is something that we've strongly benefited from during this COVID time. And it came out of the perspective of wanting to give back to local society, because we know that strong local societies creates jobs, creates also the ability for consumers to go and purchase our products. So it is a closed loop. Also from an economic point of view, healthy societies, healthy agricultural landscapes are linked and cannot be separated. And looking forwards, and the topic of jobs and job security and youth, this is going to be more critical than ever. So we need to look at it holistically, and I truly believe that agriculture, once again, will play a critical role. And if we look at it at a global scale, we see how many people are involved in agriculture. This local for local, or this supply of food and jobs are intertwined.
Thank you. So I'm very happy that we have already received a few questions from our audience, and we're going to see them popping up through our Slido. And I'm glad we also have the time to run them. So question 1 is, don't you think that sheep and goat meat is going to gain more in terms of consumption with more migrants coming from Islamic countries? Who would like to take this one? Maybe you, Tero.
Yes, can you hear me now? Good. Yeah, well, it very much can be so in a way. I, however, believe that that poultry will, however, be the winner, let's say, when this immigration takes place more and more. So I do believe that the development in poultry will continue like it has been.
I'll turn to you, Andrea. What's your prediction on the side of the Commission?
Thank you. Indeed, you've seen on the slide that sheep and goat meat consumption is going to remain stable. It's an assumption there that despite the increasing home cooking, as for example for lambs, which is spreading outside of maybe the traditional countries which are consuming this, it's also the fact of the price, which means that the affordability of the sheep meat, for example, or goat is lower compared to the others, as for example poultry. With the specific part of the question, which focused on the immigration from the Islamic countries, it's again, I would refer to the price, so whether they would be afford to buy more of this kind. So all in all, if you sum, on the one hand, increasing maybe home cooking for this kind of meat, on the other hand, more migrants coming from the Islamic, but maybe with lower purchasing power to buy this meat in the EU. All in all, it remains stable, what I just showed in the outlook. Thanks.
Thank you. We had a second question related to the dairy sector. If I could have the Slido screen, yes. With the new cap, will the amount of milk exported from Europe decrease? And will countries such as New Zealand and the US overtake Europe's position in the global market? Maybe one for you, Jean-Luc?
Vaste sujet. Les flux de produits vont évidemment dépendre des aspects de compétitivité, mais également de disponibilité de lait. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans une situation où la croissance laitière européenne est de l'ordre de 1,5% par an. Celle des États-Unis est un peu plus soutenue. Celle de l'Océanie, je veux parler de la Nouvelle-Zélande, mais de l'Australie, ces 2 dernières années a plutôt été limitée. Donc aujourd'hui, la Nouvelle-Zélande n'est pas, compte tenu des disponibilités de lait, en mesure de massivement augmenter ses exports. Ensuite, vont largement impacter sur les aspects de compétitivité les variations des taux de change. Et réellement, en ce moment, ce sont les États-Unis, cette année 2020 et probablement en perspective 2021, ce sont les États-Unis qui se présentent je dirais, en position de force, avec d'une part une production laitière dynamique et d'autre part une parité euro-dollar qui est favorable, largement favorable pour eux, pour l'exportation dans le monde, sachant qu'aujourd'hui, le pays moteur pour l'importation, c'est incontestablement la Chine, et on le constate à nouveau sur cette fin d'année 2020.
Thank you. Andrea, would you like maybe to comment on the fact that, or on the assumption that EU exports in dairy products are going to decrease?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We have a bit of echo here, so I'm sorry if I sound a bit weird. In the outlook, what I just presented to you, EU is expected to remain the world's largest dairy exporter, which is going to be before New Zealand and the US. On the New Zealand side, towards 2030, there will be also some limitations as they are also reaching the limits in terms of the natural resources, which will then limit their potential to increase. But they will still remain the second. As for the US, they will be the ones from the top 3 dairy exporters to gain the most. As I said, there will be also increasing competition of the other markets. And I also said during my presentation that it's competition which is for certain products, more for the commodities, which are then used for processing, than for the quality products. So EU will remain more or less in the volume stable compared to what we have now, so not dramatic decrease. Just to clarify, there was a part of the question which referred to the new Common Agriculture Policy. These assumptions for the outlook were made with the current policy in place, as we all know that the new CAP is under negotiation, so it's very difficult now to put a pen on it and to take this fully into account. So we will need to wait and to compare our projection this year and next year with hopefully new CAP already designed and agreed. Thanks.
Indeed, indeed. So we have yet another question. Almost all of you have identified animal welfare as being a crucial element for producers to take into account. What do you mean by that in practice? That is a difficult question. Maybe Jan, would you like to take this one to start with, and we'll turn to our other speakers?
Yes, I start and they can think. Yes, for me, it was a choice not to intensify my farm, but to broaden my farm. The intensification is then you have 100 or 150 or 200 or more animals. And my choice was I have 60, 70 animals so that they can walk outside. So just now they are inside, most of the day they are outside. And also the system that it is not intensified with a lot of animals on a very small room. So for me, the conscious choice to decrease my amount of animals, but to focus how can I create the added value of my product in new relationship with the consumers, with the citizens. So for me, what I see by a lot of farmers, when there are opportunities that they get a fair and true price for their products, they can in somewhat decrease the amount of animals more going outside. So for me, that is a sort of a key element also in the animal welfare discussion. So yes, that's my point.
Thank you. Robert, on the side of the SCI platform, what's the take on animal welfare? What do you have in mind when you say animal welfare?
Okay, so you're specifically pointing it to SCI platform. We have a clear position on animal welfare being a very important integral part. And animal welfare is something we dearly care about, and it is a balance to be met between the income that the farmer needs to generate versus the level of animal welfare that can be provided, extensivation, and also required, I'm going to use the word professionalization rather than intensivation from a climate perspective. So it's finding that sweet spot. Then there's a question of, does it go through labels or radical transparency? And there I'm going to now answer on a personal basis. I would prefer a radical transparency where consumers know what is being done and where the farmers are at, and showing that upfront, or even live streaming that. That doesn't have to be through cameras, but something that can be done. And that's possible with technology that exists today. The risk with labels is that you claim that you're perfect. Nobody is perfect. And when you go to a farm, or depending on how you look at it, there always will be people who will find something that will take appeal to something. Like when you go and visit a family, just because a child gets sick doesn't make them a bad parent. And so an animal will get sick and should have the right to be treated, which is also animal welfare, but then touches the point of antibiotics. So in short, radical transparency for me is the answer to it.
Thank you. Tero, you have mentioned animal welfare extensively in your contributions, also because it is a key concern of your consumers in the Nordic countries. So what about this take for you? What does animal welfare mean to you?
Yeah, let's say like mentioned already, that it's integral part of the whole ecosystem work what we are doing. And I would say that in our home markets like Sweden and Finland, the animal welfare regulations, I would say they are one of the most strict in the whole world. And on top of that, that the industry has created voluntary procedures mainly to prevent the spread of the animal diseases. And of course, it's all about the rearing conditions on farm level as well, how we are treating the animals. But like I said, the previous speaker also said that we definitely should not say that we are perfect. There's always room to improve. But I would say one of the key examples, which is I think a good signal of the good animal welfare, that antibiotics they are in basically not used in Sweden and Finland, for example, since the conditions they are however that good that there is no need to use antibiotics unless the animals really get sick. And I think that when the animal gets sick, it kind of deserves then to be healthy, and then maybe antibiotics are needed. But it's really the antibiotic-free production that is a good sign of a very good animal welfare level, without saying that it's perfect, but I think it's a good sign on European level as well.
Thank you. We have just a couple of minutes for a very final question. So, what's your opinion about having a regulatory definition for industrial farm animal production? Just like in the US environmental law, they have CAFOs. Maybe Andrea, this one is for you, or?
I can try to give my opinion.
Please.
Okay, I'm not really sure what the question targets at, but if the question is then to somehow ask for different actions depending on what is the definition of the farm, or maybe the size, whether it's also then family or business driven, I would just say it's really my own opinion that everybody should do a bit of the things to improve if it's related to environment and anything else. I'm not familiar about the environmental law in the US, but for me, it should not really be the size which will be the impacting factor. Of course, somebody will need to more than the other, but it's the responsibility of all of us to be sustainable. So it's the sector. It's not really, as I said, somebody needs to more, somebody maybe already do something at the smaller scales, but it's really the whole that needs to be environmentally responsible.
Thank you very much. And I think these will be the final words. And with that, we conclude absolutely sharp on time for the concluding remarks. So thank you very much to all of our speakers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for following this session. Please stay tuned. You will see a sort of in-between screen for just a couple of minutes. And then in about 1 minute, a minute and a half, we will have the concluding remarks from the Deputy Director General of DG Agriculture. So thank you very much for following us, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe and enjoy the end of the session. Bye-bye.